Hey Leo, it's a Libra season. Welcome. I'm trying to figure out this angle. Maybe that's where you're at, trying to figure out what angle you want to take on this month. Yeah, so what kind of angle do you want to take on this month? What works for you and what doesn't? Yeah, what works for you and what doesn't? That's the big question of the month, I'd say. And maybe some new, fresh found creativity. Maybe this Mars situation helps you realize that things will flow in and out, but you're noticing what stays core to you. What is your center, pretty much, and what you might need throughout the course of the month. It's very directional, and I think by the Aries full moon in a couple weeks, it's going to become even more, it might not become clear right away. However, a temporary moment of clarity can bring you a lot for the months to come. And I think you're listening and you're kind of ready. There's been a lot, and you realize, I think this month that's been leading up to this, leading up to how you command your space, how you choose to speak on these parts of you that you may have been more flaky or less diligent about. I can't find a better word at the moment in your past. But you're communicating now, and it's not necessarily to anyone else at the moment, but you're realizing how throughout the different situations that happened this month, but leading into this month, there's this intuitive part of you that knows, like, you're just listening to the right things or overhearing the right things and seeing the right moments happen in your life, that you realize when that happens, and this can happen to you guys sometimes, you start to realize eventually it's going to make its way to you, like personally, or you're realizing it for a future event sometimes, or how to handle something in the future. Similar thing. And this month, it's very important for you to know that you can put your wishes into the fire, but not without some effort. Not that you're someone who doesn't know how to give a little effort, but it's because of the emotional effort that you put in for a while that you're now gaining this very abundant, almost infinite amount of energy to tap into. And when you close a cycle, and if you do close a cycle this month, as you hear my voice going up and down, you're ending a battle almost, or you're ending a fight. Whether it's this one you didn't realize you had externally with others until this moment unravels and you're like, oh, this is why this happens, or X, Y, and Z. Because you've been also wondering about your relationships for a couple months now, but this is certainly how you relate and how you're in certain people's lives, and what maybe situations got you there, and how you've learned to communicate your needs. You realize it doesn't, when you can say something but no one's listening. And I just heard a great thing that reminded me of a time when I decided not to, not to help people that aren't going to listen. And then I realized, like, okay, I'm not always listening to myself either, so I need to do that as well. And then you can bring that further, and I think it was Kanye West who just says in an interview recently was that he didn't want to talk to people that don't listen to him, And you also need to listen to others too. Like, that's what's to be in a relationship sometimes, is like, know when it's also time to listen. And you're not unfamiliar with that at all. That's something that you can do. And also, depending on the amount of maybe chaos going on in your life or your head or the changes, that can also be very influential to all these different parts. See how it goes flat sometimes? It's so funny. It's almost like, huh. But there's bouts of peace this month as well. I do want to say that there's a few bouts of peace, and if you can let yourself have them, then it'll be a lot easier to declare these things to yourself. And as you declare it, you start to see and how magically things start to change. But that's not without some maybe emotional withdrawal. Sometimes we don't realize too, like when we decide to do things, yes, we can get a spurt of energy, but then do you recognize how maybe days to come after those days or day, there's this also vulnerability or this hangover, this feeling of tired that does wash over you for a moment or two. And then to me, it's almost like your body letting go of whatever it needed to in that time, and that's how it was doing it. For you, it might feel more like combativeness. You may feel like you want to debate, and it may not come off that way, or the people that you want to debate with, it doesn't mesh well by the end of the month. You can find yourself in that situation or that circumstance, or you can find that just very frustration with yourself, and then all of a sudden there's this overwhelming sense of like, glad that's over, but you have to like cry it out first, like, this is great, happy this happened, and also that was exhausting. You're like, what was the point? It's just like, yo, why? That could be Libra season for you sometimes. Sometimes they don't even know. They don't even know. And what's happening is it's showing you, fortunately, unfortunately, what you've been missing for a while, what you've been needing to see in order to feel more capable or in control of certain things in your life, and important matters too, and you are, but there's a balancing out that happens, and sometimes we go to extremes first. So it's not saying that this month won't be exhausting for you. It might be a little bit, if you decide to kind of retract all the things that happened. Just think about your month and kind of extend it to here, where just trust those moments where you're not supposed to go, or you're not feeling like vibing with these people, because it may just be that it's the energy that's happening right now and affecting you right now, not necessarily for months to come. It doesn't mean it's a permanent thing. This month, think of it as many different temporaries. It's a great way to see this month how it could be. But then again, remembering what we were talking about in the beginning, is that see what stays when you express your freedoms, whether that's not to do something you have done the past few years just because you've done it, or hang out with certain people at a certain time just because you've always done it. Remember that traditional part of you has been switching up for a while, and there's this needing for adventure as well, which you feel more free to speak upon. You feel more understanding of where this is coming from, even though you don't always need one. Even though you may want one. And that when you go through these moments of maybe these even split seconds of realizing what has made you frustrated before, and it's like this thing turns where you start to feel you're more capable of what's coming, and you see how the cycle is ending. You notice it. right? And then all of a sudden you get flashbacks. Some of you, this is just like memories and times of when this conversation and this is for some of you, so it could be different layers. Like I said before, it's kind of an evolution of that, where you are realizing that there's certain conversations that are much easier now than they used to be. But there's a part of you that still likes that fired up debate, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that also can sometimes leave you in situations of questioning maybe your own worth or your own value and what you value. And I think that's just Libra season rubbing off on you. I think ultimately you come back to that center, what stays, what sticks, and how tremendous you can be at dousing a situation or building up more heat to it when it's needed and necessary, or letting things be as they are, not really stoking that bonfire. So this month is going to need all different, like, this agility, just to be more agile. You don't necessarily, it's probably going to move a little fast, but you're almost ready for it. And then all of a sudden you weren't ready for the emotional things to come out. However, if there is a Capricorn in your life or someone who you know has been through a similar situation, it would be good to maybe communicate with them about it. And again, don't forget yourself. You know, don't forget to be like, okay, I know I can do all this, but like, what about me? You know, I'm the Leo here. My life. You might want to maybe bring people together. That could be a great thing to do depending on how you're able and want to do that. But you realize certain situations that you've been in before, some are easier and some are not even something you would engage with anymore. Like you used to, and you're like, that's really, sure, you can have that. Like, it's not this, I want to win just because I can, or have a, I haven't been out in a while, hear me roar. It's not that. It's just like you understanding that there might be a question of your worth here, but it doesn't have to pull me all the way in. It doesn't have to take me all the way out. I mean, I could just be not swayed too much by Libra season, and to be more remembering more of like what stays with you. Again, just that what stays with you during these times. You may feel more centered, more capable by the end of the month. And you also may, throughout this conversation, towards the end of the month, maybe towards the eclipse is more, you have a very an intimate conversation with someone that you're close with, and you find that this situation brings you something you needed to hear. You know that this conversation is important while it's happening, almost like you just feel it in the moment. And then for days to come, it's like you just went on an adventure, but it was just through conversation. And this relationship that you've maybe had but also built with someone. And it's a beautiful thing, because it can get really tricky this month if you don't, and even just expressing that to this person could be not normal in your relationship, but something that is very much appreciated, maybe more than you realize about even the foundation of relationship that you have. Because sometimes not expressing things or holding things in is not always helpful for our evolution. Like, it's never a mistake to say how you feel. If that's what you're supposed to do, that's what's supposed to happen. Unless you come to realize it's only coming from, or it's just because you want the last word, or you want this month is just not, there's so much happening that you want as much ease in between everything as possible. So it's really easy for you to, and I advise to do this, just get caught up in your life. Just get caught up in what you need and what you want, and don't be afraid to ask the full moon for what you want this month. Okay, Leo? All information to work with me is below one-on-one, as well as the extended and the second part to this reading, which will be on Patreon, and there will be links below for all of this. I hope you have a great Libra season, and I'll see you next month.